Gentlemen, we are back for yet another episode of Unfiltered. And as with us always, Mr. Gary Alex and Mr. Drew Cameron, I'm Weldon Long, your dutiful host, I suppose. So, Drew, you had a ton of questions come in when you were emceeing and hosting Lead 2020 this year, 2021 this year, and the questions we couldn't get to, so we thought it'd be kind of fun to.
Yeah, so we told our audience that to give us some questions. We had a very short segment there with Lead 2021, and we did a little bit of, riffing on contracting, to start, where I kind of teed you guys up, and you guys were fantastic, the legend and the guru, to respond to some questions. And we had a bunch of questions that were then submitted. So we didn't get to them, and I told our audience that we would cover them in a future Unfiltered episode. So this will be like a little bit of a, let's see what we can get through. We'll try and make it a little rapid fire. Are we distracting
you? I'm trying to get that lighter.
No, there it is.
Continue.
Okay. So how do you go from, our topic was at Lead 2021 was sales accountability. And so, playing off of that, how do you go from holding people responsible to getting your people to take ownership and personal accountability and get alignment within the organization? Right? Because at first it's like, you're telling them what to do. You're chasing them down. Sometimes you're battling with your people almost. Is what I hear. I got to drag them through broken glass on fire to get them to do what I want them to do, that type of thing. To where you've now flipped the table, and they're shared vision, right? Not forced compliance, and you've got your people taking ownership and personal accountability. So let's start with you, Weldon.
I think for me personally, in my companies over the years, it's about selling your people on your story, like having a company rally cry. The tack that I always take, because it's my favorite, I love the underdog, and I always position us as the underdog and get everybody invested in, they're trying to hold us down, they're trying to hold us back, right? And get everybody invested in a mission, right? And not just a traditional mission statement, the values and that type of thing, but getting them involved in the story. I come from a background of poverty and struggle and difficulty, and I was the least likely to succeed, and yet I did. So I love that underdog story. It's why I love American Idol. They find these kids sleeping in cars on the beach, and they make them into stars or whatever, and it's just such a great thing to watch. And I remember my first company here in town, which you're familiar with, we've known each other for a lot of years, and in our second or third year of business, basically the local business HVAC community, the building department, tried to do a takedown on us and brought up my past felony record. It was all public, and I had dealt with it, and it was nothing to hide, but they came after us hard.
Front page of the paper.
Front page of the newspaper, a mugshot of me on the front page of our newspaper. And we overcame that, but it actually worked out to be the greatest thing, because that was the rallying cry. We're the little guy. They're trying to keep us down, right? They're trying to beat us down.
Southwest Airlines versus American Airlines.
Exactly.
Back when Southwest was a startup, same thing.
Exactly, Kelleher, same kind of philosophy. And so it was funny, because once we became one of the larger companies in town, I kept finding ways to be the underdog, right? And it kind of reminds me of the Michael Jordan story. I think that was Jordan, it was always looking for The Last Dance, and always looking for a chip on his shoulder, something that somebody said to get that fuel, right? And so now, I invested in a new company here a little less than 2 years ago, and we're the new guy, and they're going to try to hold us down. And I've taken everybody in our company, all these people, they don't know anything about what happened back in 2006 and 2007. But once they come to work for us, they know about it, because I sell them on the story. And I continue that story. I said, they're still mad. They're still trying to hold us down, but we're going to rally. And I think if you can find a story, find a cause, find something that people can get invested in and be a part of, right? To go out there and fight the good fight. And of course, you got to remind them all the time, every week, you got to give them examples. Man, this happened. They're trying to get us down, and that happened, and now this guy's doing this, and they're saying this about us, right? It's kind of funny. This goes back to 2006, 2007, and I had my very first company, Best Value Heating and Cooling, and I had purchased another couple of companies here in town. And I would rally all of our people every week, and I would say, we're going to buy every company in town. We're going to own this town, blah, 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 very generically, right? Well, one day the phone rings in my office, and it's Frank Johnson, that at the time owned Wright Plumbing and Heating, which was the second oldest company here in town, 60 or 70 years old. And he's reading me the right out. He goes, what's this I hear about you telling your people you're buying our company? And I said, Frank, relax. It's just a thing I do every week. I tell them we're going to buy everybody. And your name might have came up because you're an old company, but it's just a generic thing. He's like, oh, okay. He goes, hey, well, I mean, are you interested in buying the company? And that's how I ended up buying right? So it's about finding a rallying cry, something people can identify with and gather around. Listen, Alex over here is the king, the whiz at values and goal alignment and all that kind of stuff. And that stuff's super important from a practical day in, day out managing your company. But I think there's a lot of value in finding a story that people can sink their teeth into and say, man, I'm part of something, I'm part of this battle. And I got to go out there and fight the battle. And people will take a bullet for you if they feel like they're invested in the story with you.
You're creating a little bit of buzz, a little bit of energy there, and that's important. Obviously, you see sports teams do this. They're always looking for the bulletin board material, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's why
exactly what it is.
Coaches tell the players, don't talk anything about that.
Right.
Always talk them up. Talk up the competition, right? Don't trash talk them. And so you definitely don't want to do that leading into a game because they'll put it on the bulletin board and then, like I said, that's that rally cry that you're talking about. So let's go to the whiz, the king, the legend. He just gave you 2 more names. So.
Yeah, they just keep stacking up.
So personal ownership, how do you make it happen?
I 100% agree with Wally. I do think you need a story. My story is not his story, so I came from poverty in a different place. But we use the same philosophy. I think it's culture. So that's really what you're describing is how do you build a culture where everybody is built and aligned around those same principles. We use, we're going to be the best and we're going to dominate. So I'm an athlete, and so my business partner Andrew in iMarket was also an All-American football player. He's an athlete. We share the same ideology, which is we hate to lose more than we like to win, and we want to dominate. And so our story is we got to be the best. We got to be number 1 or number 2 in every product category. How do we do it? So the culture and the alignment and all the same principles that you're describing for us is about it's competition. We love competition. We embrace competition. We're going to go out and wrestle. We're going to street fight. We're going to do whatever we can, and we're going to win. And if we lose, we're going to understand why we lost so we can win the next time. So we're not going to win every battle. Salespeople don't close every deal, but we're going to learn from that. So I 100% agree that you need more than just a value that's saying integrity on the wall. Right. You need to actually drive. What do those things mean on a day-to-day basis? Execution, and then I think something that we can all do better. We do it pretty well, the 3 of us, but our companies is celebrate. You've got to really celebrate your successes. Like when you buy that company, I mean, you got to make that fun and you got to make that exciting and you got to give people the fact that, hey, we did it. We climbed the mountain. Now what's the next mountain? Right. So Olympic athletes historically will tell you that a lot of them go into depression once they achieve their Olympic result because they spent their entire life focusing on that one objective. And they achieved it, and they didn't know what to do after that. Wow. So one of the things we want to do is we want to say, well, yeah, we want to do this, but we have this BHAG, the Jim Collins Good to Great, big, hairy, audacious goal. So yeah, we want to get to our goal. We want to climb this mountain, but there's another mountain out there already, and then there's another mountain out in front of that one. And so we're never done climbing that mountain. So for us, it's about being the best we can. And one of our values that we installed this year, Wally, because we've got a lot of young people in our company, and they give us a lot of energy and excitement, but they're also wired a little bit differently. They've been trained, brought up, and cultured differently in terms of society than we have. So it's becoming the best version of you. So health, wellness, mental, acuity, happiness, the things that make you feel really great about life. We've installed that as one of our values. And so celebration and having fun and just being a part of a bigger unit is part of how we really try to drive some of those principles. And to be honest, I mean, I get my energy from the young people. I love that. You have energy givers and energy takers, and they're energy givers. They're outstanding. So.
It's funny you talk about stories, and I know iMarket's a digital marketing company, not an HVAC company, but it's another one of the companies you own. And I heard you tell the story one time about how you and Andrew met in the elevator.
That's right.
And it's always stuck with me.
Right.
That's the value of a story. Mm-hmm. That's I hate to keep the viewers in suspense, so I'll have you share that story. But it's such a powerful story that's the culture of that company. Mm-hmm. These 2 guys coming from random places, meeting a friggin' elevator, and they're going to the same meeting.
The exact same meeting without the knowledge that we were going to the same meeting.
Yeah.
Had no idea.
But it's such a great thing that people can, like, if I'm at iMarket, it's like I could identify, like, man, this thing came from just pure, serendipity, the basis of this company. So I just think that kind of story is so powerful.
So you want me to share now?
Yeah, I think we should. I don't want to keep everybody in suspense.
You were on a roll.
We kind of halfway shared it, but it's so powerful that I heard you and Andrew tell it one time years ago.
Yeah.
And it stuck with me.
Yeah, so that was a different business. That business has been sold.
Oh, forget the whole thing then.
No, it's actually what EGIA is in terms of my relationship with EGIA.
Gotcha.
It is my portion of what I contributed to as a co-founder of Contractor University, what EGIA is. So it was a business called EPL for residential. So Andrew and I, Andrew was with another guy doing a different business, and we were both told to meet with a gentleman in Denver, Colorado, of all places. And so we were both in town to meet with this individual. We did not know each other. Andrew was in the web business, had a custom web shop, and was doing lots of high-end e-commerce type projects, $250,000 type website stuff. The Fat Cat, Ben & Jerry's, those types of websites. And I was building the EPL, franchise type model, which was all the business processes for contractors online. And several people told me, you will never, ever put content online and sell it behind a paywall. It will never work. I literally, a very successful person told me that. I'm like, I think that's where it's going, so I'm going to pursue this. So we were meeting, at the same place. And on a random basis, we were both staying at the DoubleTree Hilton. And so I walk in the elevator, and here's Andrew, and I get in, and he's like, hey man, what's going on? I'm like, hey man, what's going on? And Andrew's is a big guy. He's like you. He's about 6'3", 6'4". He was offensive lineman. He's a big boy. And so I'm like, what are you doing in town? He's like, I'm having a meeting. And I'm like, oh really, what do you do? And he's like, well, I'm in the digital marketing and online marketing. Oh, that's cool. And he's like, what are you here for? I'm like, well, I'm kind of developing this process where I want to take the stuff online and I want to put it out where people can, access the information. I want it to be low cost. I want it to be accessible, and I want to change the industry. That's my philosophy. Is we had all this stuff from service experts, and we had all the information that I had from my career at Lennox. And so he's like, well, what are you doing? And I'm like, well, I got this meeting tomorrow morning, 8 o'clock. And he's like, oh, I got a meeting tomorrow morning, 8 o'clock. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. What's your business model? He's like, well, I got the commercial version of what you're talking about. Oh, wow. And I said, no way. And so, the next morning we show up at the same meeting together, and you're in the elevator. So that's actually how we met. So we actually, he got rid of his other guy, and we partnered up, and we've been fast friends. That was 2001. Yeah. And it was sort of the precursor. AOL was still going on. Dial-up was still going on. So things have changed a lot, obviously, with the technology and so forth. But we're using video now, and obviously different kind of technologies. But at the time we did it, it was very cutting edge. In fact, it got Product of the Year from Contracting Business at the time when we finally released it. So
the value of a story. It's like the story I tell. I came to this town in 2003 to a homeless shelter, was there for 6 months trying to find a job, walking the streets, knocking on the doors. Not very easy with a 3-time, felony record and 9th grade high school dropout and all this stuff. And I walked in a little heating and air conditioning company here in town that had contracted with some big muckety-muck outside consultant to come in and do some hiring for them. And I walk in that room and I get interviewed.
Iconic consultant,
Iconic,
right?
Turned out to be iconic and legendary and all these superlatives. And that guy gave me a shot. That guy said, hey, we're going to look past all this crazy stuff in your life and we're going to give you a shot because we think you might have something. That was in 2003, 18 years ago. Yeah. And that dude turned out to be Drew Cameron. This dude right here was the guy that gave me a shot in this industry. So you just never know. And it's those kind of crazy stories that people remember and connect to.
I want to bring that story full circle, as we talked about the other day when you came into the studio, right? For our viewers, they probably all have heard that now. Maybe some hadn't. They didn't know that we were connected that way. But then we obviously come full circle. We're working together doing this, right? Right. Which is pretty cool. But
as I recall, you were the one that gave me the nod to the EGIA board and Bruce Madelich. Right, they didn't know me from Adam.
Yeah, they asked, and I said, yeah, I like what he's doing. I like, again, the online presence, the LMS learning module that you're doing online. I said, yeah, without a doubt. I said, he's got a great message, and I said, you got obviously a heart of gold, and so I said, yeah, without a doubt, in a heartbeat. So, but the coolest thing about this story is how full circle it came, because the guy I was a consultant to a contractor. And the contractor that hired you, he sold his company and moved around a little bit, and then just a couple of years ago, you gave him an opportunity.
Came back to town, and he was, and it's funny because when he came back to town, he was looking for a job. He was a guy that's not going to work for somebody else for very long.
Yeah.
And I knew that going into it. We had a very frank conversation. In fact, he's a competitor now here in town. I'm fine with that. He's a great competitor because he's not giving stuff away. He knows how to do things properly. And so when he came to work with us, we knew it'd be a short time. It turned out to be shorter than I would have liked because he got another great opportunity he just couldn't say no to. And then he did that for a while. Then he opened his own company. But yeah, it was pretty cool because, nearly 20 years later, he came back and he needed, a place to land and rest his hat for a while, and he came back to work for us. And, somewhere in here is that message, is getting back to your question, it's the value of a story. That's the whole point. Can I share one more full circle moment?
One more, you got it.
So about 6-7 years ago, I get a phone call into the office, and it was from the Chief Justice of the Colorado Supreme Court. And she left a message at the office with her title. And I got it. I'm like, okay.
Now what?
If I'm going to be charged, I wouldn't go straight to court. I haven't been charged yet, so they can't go straight to court without at least charging me first. So she's probably not calling me about a warrant.
Did you have an adrenaline shot when you saw that name?
Hey, if I see blue lights a mile away, I'm like, oh shit. But I call her back, and she introduced herself, wonderful lady, and she says, Mr. Long, are you aware that judges all over the state, out of their own pocket, are buying copies of your book, The Upside of Fear, and they're giving them to criminal defendants as they sentence them to prison? She's like, yeah, they're sending them to prison saying, oh, by the way, take this book with you, right? As a lesson, right? And she asked me if I would be willing to come and be the keynote presenter at the Colorado Judicial Conference, which is 500 state court judges up in Vail, Colorado. They meet every year, and asked me to be the general session keynoter. Nice. And of course I accepted and went up there, and I got to tell you, I can't even describe to you the satisfaction that 500 judges had to sit quietly and listen to me for an hour. And none of them were wearing robes, but they were judges. And the coolest part of the whole thing, there were two really cool things. Number one, the judge that requested to introduce me was the last judge who ever sentenced me to prison here in Colorado. And he had read the book, he heard I was speaking, and he requested if he could introduce me, gave me a wonderful introduction, a very warm introduction, and I did the keynote, and I talked a lot about my story and Hunter and all that kind of stuff. And at the end, I bring Hunter up on stage, and he talks for a few minutes, and when he finished, 500 judges got on their feet and gave this kid a standing ovation. That was my personal kind of full story, kind of full circle moment. The bottom line here, I think the message here, and Drew, and you'll wrap this up with something brilliant, I know, but it's just the value of a story. Stories evoke emotion, and we've got to share stories with our homeowners. And as Drew always says, you got to share the homeowner story. It can't just be about our story. They want to tell their story. What is that old Zig Ziglar, the sweetest sound you'll ever hear is the sound of your own name, right? People want to tell their story. They want to talk about themselves, and we got to be so careful. It's so easy in this business, especially when you get busy, to go in and talk about mechanical things and mechanical solutions and indoor air quality solutions. You got to connect with the story, right? You got to have that emotional connection with people. I call it I don't call it a self-disclosure loop. That's what it's called. In Psychology Today, this wonderful article a couple of years ago, and talked about if you're willing to disclose personal things about yourself, your story, people will share it back, and it forms this incredible connection between people. So the value of a story, I think that's the real lesson of this, whether it's a business story, a sales story, the customer story, man, stories.
Yeah, it's, you kept saying the word in there, and, in business and sales, we keep hearing the term, and we've used it here, and we use it because everybody knows it, closing ratio. But it really is a connection ratio. You either connected with the customer and they connected with you and the story, right? And you connected those stories, or you didn't. And sometimes you connect with a customer and they do business with you, but that also doesn't mean necessarily that you did connect with their story. And I think that's the thing, obviously the last year we lost connection. They're still trying to keep us disconnected, right? Yeah. And people, suffered. There was some health crises. There were some people who went to the ultimate extreme of sacrifice and taking matters into their own hands because of being disconnected. And in society, we want to be connected. We want to be connected with other people. We want to be connected with causes. and things are important. And so when you talk about that, I think, and what Gary said as well, that's what your coworkers can get, can get rallied behind, but your customers now want to be part of that too. And so, cause marketing is obviously a big thing now, and not because you're doing it to say, oh, look at me, do business with me because I do this. This is just who we are, right? And this is what we stand for, like Bombus Socks, right? For every pair of socks they sell, they donate a pair of socks to the homeless, right? Because it's the number one most requested thing in homeless shelters is socks. And they're, no secret, they are the biggest deal that was ever done on Shark Tank. I mean, the most successful deal, I should say, that has gone on the furthest. So that being said, and that's why I think this works, right here, because the three of us are connected. We're connected obviously through our work through EGIA, but we're also connected as friends. We legitimately enjoy each other's company. And then we have a couple guys behind the camera with Danny and Andy that are here too, that that we also enjoy their company, and they enjoy being part of this too. And then our extended family out there in Sacramento, they make our jobs easy. They tee us up for success, and we get to have fun. And once a year, we get to do something big where we get everybody to get connected. All of the faculty, right? All of the members, we all come together in Vegas and we connect.
We had 1,500 members that were scheduled to attend that was canceled because of COVID.
Yeah.
So I can't wait to see what happens this year. By the way, Danny and Andy, the two youngest looking old guys I ever met in my life. Both these guys probably get carded every time they go buy a beer. And I think, what are you, 40, 37?
47 this year.
47?
No, you're not.
Dude, you gotta be kidding me. The dude looks like he's 27.
12. He looks 12.
Unbelievable. Andy's the same way. And Andy's the exact same way. And I just want to remind everybody that also, it kind of ties into this, be prepared to share your story in local media as often as you can. We had two things just popped up. I get the opportunity to tell my story a lot because of my books and my story, but I always tie it back into our HVAC company. A local television station is doing a profile on me, and one of the local magazines is having me on the cover about my books and all that. But in the interviews, I always tie it back, oh, by the way, I took what I learned in my story and my 15 years of training and consulting in the HVAC business, and I incorporated it into a local company here, and we're taking everything we've learned about great companies, and we're building that in our little company here, Pico and Performance. So look for every opportunity to bring your company story. There's tons of opportunities. I'm telling these local television stations, they are starving for content every single morning. The local magazines, right? The local business journals, the local newspaper, they are starving for content, right? You can go online and just Google how to do a press release and type a press release on something cool that you're doing in your company and send it out to every media outlet in your town. And they'll call you and say, hey, you want to come do an interview on the morning show? They need content. Get your company story out there as much as you can.
I'll bring this to a close. I don't know that they would actually probably even have to go to Google to say how to write a press release. I imagine there's a site somewhere.
Multiple press releases, examples. It's under the marketing section, section 6 under marketing. And there's a best practice there called public relations and media relations, networking with your media. And there's some sample press releases on there. Might find that on EGI's website.
Might find that on the EGIA website.
You guys thought I was just rambling. And it came back down to Contractor University.
Gentlemen, let's raise a glass.
Cheers, my friends.
To telling the stories and connecting with one another.
Love you, brother.
Love you.